Today on episode 50 of Chasing Energy. That's considered to be like the most nutrient-dense food you can eat. And yet I heard her in a podcast interview like 3 months after her video went viral, and she said, yeah, I don't grow them at home because they're just too much of a pain in the butt. The problem with the mason jar is it was never designed to sprout. There's no airflow through it. And what happens when you don't have airflow? They get soggy, and then you can get, bad things happen. There is a lot of belief required to bring a product into the world that does not exist. You are 35% less likely to develop any type of cancer if you are eating broccoli at least once a week. If you're only going to eat one vegetable, eat a broccoli. I'm trying to make a great impact on the world. I think the number one thing is spreading the awareness of the health benefits and that it's really not that complicated. You don't have to outsource this. You can actually do it. Thanks for joining Chasing Energy today. This is episode number 50. I have recorded several interviews to sort of queue up the rest of the year because I want to start releasing every Tuesday and possibly even every Thursday as well. So I'm putting pressure on myself by even saying that to you right now. But the ask there, of course, is that if you haven't written a review already, that would be awesome. And if there's a particular episode that speaks to you or content that you want more of, whether it's nutrition, training, or mindset, just put that in your review. Hey, I want to hear more about this topic. I do read everyone, and I try to schedule it around what people need to hear right now. Jake is a great interviewer. He actually asked me if he could do this as a way of informing people on how to do sprouts. And when I edited this episode, I realized just how good he is at bringing out great questions and even better adding to those conversations to make them even more effective. Thank you for being a listener of the Chasing Energy podcast. Feel free to share it with someone who you think might benefit from the nutritional insights of sprouts that we discuss here. Of course, I am the inventor and the founder of Sprout Spout. You can check it out at sproutspout.com. I would love to have that in your home. You can check it out at sproutspout.com. If you put in the code CE, as in Chasing Energy, you will get 10% off your purchase. And I would love to hear back from you. Thank you so much for All right, man. Welcome to Chasing Energy. Back to Chasing Energy, Jake.
Back.
Yeah, I think it's been about a year and a half since we last talked. Yeah. And you're looking great, man. Are you still doing the power yoga?
Oh, definitely. I love the yoga. I'm honestly I've been really into fasting recently. I've been really into doing a 3-day fast here and then kind of eating super clean on the off days and then steam room and yoga. Just trying to stay really healthy.
Oh, it's funny you say that. I got a barrel sauna
No
about
way.
a year ago. It's a 6-person barrel sauna. And then I put in the cold plunge about 3 months ago.
Oh, crazy.
I cannot say which one I like most because the barrel sauna, it's a little harder to go in there during the hot, muggy summers, but I do it anyway.
Totally. Yeah.
But man, about an hour before bed, it's fantastic for sleep.
I have one of the steam room, like it's not a barrel, but it's like a cheap room and there's a steam unit you put in there, and so I do the same thing before bed. It's great.
You're in California, right? I was going to say,
Los Angeles.
Real estate's a little easier for me to put a barrel sauna in my backyard here in Tennessee.
Yeah, I can't put a barrel in my apartment here. yeah, for sure.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing lately. What are you most passionate that you're doing with USA Medical in the last few months?
Yeah, I think we're really focusing on just improving everything, the products, the customer sales line, the post-purchase line. Everything is just getting better. If you've experienced USA Medical in the past, if you've tried our CBD, tried our CBG, and you loved it, it's even better now. If you didn't like it, it's even better now, and like everything we're doing is just, we focus on making things better. We don't spend any money on ads. We've never spent any money ever on an ad because we just want to spend the money on the products and making it the best. And we're still a startup, so until I feel like we're not a startup, I'm not going to waste money on ads. The point is, make the company undeniably amazing, which I think it is at this point, and hopefully that's enough to keep growing with word of mouth.
I love it, man. I love it, and I appreciate it. You were kind enough to let me send you a Sprout Spout.
I'm stoked to try it. I'm so excited to get into this. So
it's a game changer.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, it's a game changer. You and I both work from a place of We want to impact the world, as Steve Jobs would say, put a
Mhm.
dent in the universe in a way that we want to make a healthy impact on the world, better than it would have been otherwise. So I'll let you lead off with the first questions because we
Yeah,
want to kind of use this session as a Q&A on sprouts and maybe a little bit of CBD, CBG as well.
totally. I mean, I think this is a great, unique kind of time we have because I told you I tried
Yeah.
sprouting. I'm a big Mike Posner fan. I don't know if you know who that is, but he talks about sprouting all the time in all his videos. I love him. I love his music. All of the jars, and then I searched like USDA or organic, sprouts, and alfalfa is what pops up
Yeah.
everywhere. I'm like, okay, cool. So I got that. I did it, the first cycle, and I liked it. I liked how it tasted. It was fresh. I put some vinegar or whatever on it, and I just didn't feel great. Like my stomach kind of hurt after it. I was like, well, it's probably just me adjusting to it. So I redid it. Next round, I had 2 of them, so I got the next round and tried it again. And I put on some like a sandwich or whatever. Try it, and then again, same thing. I was like, I don't feel good, and I was like, you know what? It obviously has to be the sprouts. I'm just gonna say, okay, it was the sprouts. Threw it away. Never thought about it again. And then you text me or whatever, and you're like, hey, have you tried sprouting? You want to try sprouting? Blah blah blah. I was like, yeah, I tried it. I hated it. And you're like, well, what'd you try? I was like, alfalfa. And you're like, there it is. I was like, really? And like, the way you responded to that was such like oh, I'm an expert. I know exactly why you felt that way, and you need to try this other thing. So today, I think I want to understand, why is alfalfa what everyone does? Why is it not correct in your view?
Yeah.
And then what about this kit? What is this kit that makes it so much, easier or better to sprout?
Yeah, so alfalfa is the one. I'll start by saying why everybody wants it. It's because it's what they put on sandwiches. And it is, the way I call it, is the most amiable sprout. It's very neutral flavored. It's kind of like putting spinach in food, where it's just going to absorb, or tofu. It's going to absorb whatever you put on it. So alfalfa is sort of like the flavor friendly sprout. The reason that sometimes it's considered to be more of the one that deters people for stomach issues is it is more prone to mildew than most of the other ones. And so this is part of why the Sprout Spout was invented. I was sprouting in mason jars, especially during the pandemic.
Right. Yeah.
And broccoli sprouts are the healthiest ones you can eat, but they are also the most expensive. And I had to throw out like 2 or 3 batches in a row because they weren't coming out right. And the frustration for me was, here you have Dr. Rhonda Patrick had done several videos on broccoli sprouts. And here you had this nutrient powerhouse that's considered to be like the most nutrient dense food you can eat. And yet I heard her in a podcast interview like 3 months after her video went viral. And she said, yeah, I don't grow them at home because they're just too much of a pain in the butt. And so,
No way.
yeah, the reason that I got frustrated was because here we are with this very nutrient dense food, but everyone's trying to make a mason jar serve that purpose. And the problem with
Right.
the mason jar is it was never designed to sprout. There's no airflow through it. And what happens when you don't have airflow? Humidity gets just stuck in there, and they get soggy, and then you can get, bad things happen when you have too much humidity in vegetables. So that was the basis for what it does. And that's partially sort of answers your question of why I kind of say with people, if you're going to sprout at home in a mason jar, alfalfa is not the best place to start.
Yeah. So you think that my stomach aches came from probably mold or like mildew, or you think it was something happened to those sprouts during the spray? Because I wasn't the most conscious about it. I thought it was kind of like, oh, you just spray water every day and you just kind of leave it. So you think that there was probably something wrong with those sprouts?
I think the easy way to test it is get a sandwich with alfalfa sprouts from your local sandwich shop. And if it still aggravates your stomach, you may have a sensitivity to it.
Sure.
I have never met anyone with a sensitivity to alfalfa. I have heard people say, there's some famous people who have said, of all the sprouts, alfalfa is the one you have to be a little bit careful with making sure you don't get mildew from.
Okay, so now, what sprouts did you send me in this kit? What's in here?
I believe broccoli, and then because I wanted to make sure I didn't put, in case you were sensitive to alfalfa, I made sure I didn't send you any that had alfalfa in it. So there's a 5-seed mix that we have that I don't think I sent you because it has alfalfa in it. I sent you broccoli and mung bean. Mung bean is the easiest one to sprout. A lot of people don't know this. Sprouted mung beans are actually keto friendly because when you sprout them, they create so much nutrients and they actually go down in carbs versus a cooked bean that by the time,
Really?
by the time you take out the fiber, it's almost like a neutral net carb type thing.
Mhm.
But mung beans, I tell anybody who's never sprouted, I'm like, dude, just do mung beans because you soak
Mm.
them for 12 hours overnight, 10 to 12 hours. And in 48 hours in the Sprout Spout, you can harvest them. Now,
No
you can
way.
keep them in there for 3 days, even 4 days if you want.
Okay.
The tails will just get longer. But literally after 48 hours in the Sprout Spout, you can grab one in your hand and just squeeze it, and
Whoa.
once you can squeeze a mung bean and it breaks, that's ready when it's ready to eat. It'll have a tail on it. This is 48 hours. I'm like, "No, that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
real
yeah.
thing." They're like, "There's
That's
no
awesome.
way you made 8 to 10 servings of mung beans in, like, less than 3
Right.
days." I'm like, "I do it all the
I
time."
did. Yeah.
So,
So cool.
my favorite thing to do with them, they taste like a combination of edamame and sugar snap peas when you have mung beans.
Mhm.
Very popular with my
Mhm.
kids. What I like to throw in a fat, so either truffle oil or olive oil, maybe some burrata cheese, and just eat it like a salad. And you can throw
Yeah.
them on your wraps as well, but they have enough fiber and protein that macro-wise, you can actually
Mm.
make a very healthy salad with mung beans.
No, like, you're saying don't add, like, lettuce or spinach.
Saying for your macros, you can actually hit your
Mhm.
macros with just mung beans.
Whoa.
With
Wow.
broccoli
Okay.
sprouts or alfalfa sprouts or the 5-seed salad mix, you're probably gonna
Mhm.
wanna throw in some more protein on there. They're more of
Mhm.
micronutrients, so they're gonna have all your vitamins and minerals type things, but they're
Mhm.
not gonna have a lot of protein.
Okay. But you're saying mung bean actually has a lot of
Yeah,
protein, like
yeah,
bioavailable protein.
yeah.
That's crazy. Did you know how much per serving or how
I
much?
had it in it's actually on the we I should
Oh,
know this.
okay.
I built that website,
No, it's
and
yeah.
I'm gonna look it up while we're talking.
That's very interesting to know that it has that much protein in it. That's crazy.
It's 2 grams of fiber and 3 grams of protein per handful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if you do so I try to throw this into whenever I have, like, an ambassador, I throw this cup I made specifically for the
Mhm.
Sprout Spout, but I fill this cup all the way up with dry mung beans, and so it's just over a cup. When you
Mhm.
harvest it, it'll be about 8 to 10 servings of mung beans.
Got and how long does that last after you harvest it?
Most any of the sprouts, I put them in a gallon Ziploc with a paper towel. Don't seal it all the way so it can still breathe, and I usually have no
Mhm.
problem getting a week out of them in the fridge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy. So I came into this like kind of knowing about
Mhm.
sprouts. Walking way back into it, why sprouts?
Yeah.
Like, why did you quit your job and decide to do sprouts? You know what I mean? This is a very cool, interesting thing that I want to understand. Like, how did you get here?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like it was just a cool I obviously have perspective now because 'cause I've been working on this project for 3.5 years, and
Hmm.
there was even a point where when you're trying to do an invention, it's not like drop shipping a product. It's you have to
Hmm.
basically convince yourself the world wants this thing, and then you're going through
Oh yeah.
prototypes, and you're
Hmm.
paying for molds, and then the factory
Hmm.
is telling you it can't be done. There is a lot of
Hmm.
belief required to bring a product into the world that does not exist. And in the
Hmm.
particular case of this, my arrogance was, hell, I think it's a good idea. Why wouldn't someone else? And looking back, I wish I'd have asked a lot more people, "What do you think about this?" Instead, I was like, "I'll tell you what I hate about a mason jar," and then I did it around
Yeah.
those.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
went through a lot of evolutions, and now that it's out in the public, I have gotten some good feedback where I go and people think they're gonna offend me. I'm like, "I'm here to make this the best product I possibly can."
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
what I will
Yeah.
say is, and you probably know this, Jake, you don't have a magic wand. So when people say
Mhm.
something like, "Oh, just do this, this, and this, and then make it
Yeah.
half the
It's like
price,"
I would love
it's
to do
like,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know, but
Yeah.
it's not that easy.
Yeah.
But what made me do it was I had the podcast and other
Mhm.
things like that where I was just trying to help people live a healthier life.
Yeah.
And when it came down to it, I was like, this stuff is making a minimal impact in terms of scale. Like when I think
Mhm.
about the number of people, it'd be like if you said, I want to help feed the poor. And
Mhm.
then every Sunday you brought a bowl of soup to the soup kitchen, right? It's like, okay,
Like, I'm feeding the
yeah,
poor. I am doing it. Yeah.
that's cool, but it's not going to
Yeah.
scale. And I started
Yeah.
thinking, if you just double down, you could make a much bigger impact here. When you think about like COVID lockdown, how many people in New York, especially if they had 2 Sprout Spouts, you could have so much veggies going that you would basically be making a huge salad every day with nothing but sprouts. 1 handful of mung beans, 1 handful of broccoli sprouts every day
Yeah.
into your salad. you wouldn't have to worry about a farmer's market. Your proteins, you can pretty much freeze in the freezer. You can put them in a can. You can eat them from a bar. But your
Mhm.
micronutrients, that's where a lot gets.
Yeah, it's junk. Yeah, it's not true. Right. They probably got the FDA on them being like, "Hey, stop doing that."
They had some influencers call them out and say, this is not
Yeah.
a substitute for eating a real nutrient. So
Mhm.
I was trying to say, okay, how can I make nutrients more accessible than a microwavable meal? So
That's awesome.
my mantra that I came up with lately was 30 seeds to your door, 30 seconds a day, superfoods on tap on any kitchen countertop. And I
That's
truly
awesome.
believe that. I time it. It's less than 30 seconds a day to grow these. You
Yeah.
give it one quick
Yeah.
rinse in the morning, one in the evening, and you have so much sprouts. I mean, obviously, depending on which time you do, that you can eat them every day and never run out because you're going to fill the jar every 4 days. So
Well, I love that part of it where it's like you're solving a health problem for a start, but like also you're solving a food problem. Like you're like, no, everybody can have
mhm,
renewable food in their house all the time.
mhm.
Again, you literally have food in your house all the time, and you're saying with the mung bean, there's actually enough protein to survive on it if you had to,
Yeah,
right?
I would say you could have a meal a day from it. Yes,
I'm
just
saying
the word
that's awesome.
survive.
I
Yeah.
understand. But like I guess what I'm saying is an extreme scenario, you have no
Oh
food.
yeah,
You can
yeah.
literally grow mung beans and you have protein and all the things that,
Yeah,
your body at
it
least
it is funny
starts
because I
with.
thought the health community would just like as soon as I came out, I was going straight for the health community. And what some of the people that were the
Yeah.
most interested were two groups
Yeah.
I did not see coming. The
Hmm.
preppers, the
Hmm.
ones that are basically like keep
Totally.
their
Yeah.
doomsday
Yeah.
stash in the
Doomsday.
basement.
Yeah.
They showed interest in it, and the other was homesteaders, where
I believe
people
that. Yeah.
were. And I wish it was easier to ship to Canada. My gosh, but
Oh, you and me
the
both.
number one question I
What a
get
nightmare.
from any country on the face of the earth is, "When
Mhm.
are you gonna start shipping to Canada?"
Me too.
And I'm like, "Have you priced this thing going over the border? It's absolutely insane." I sent
Not just that, yeah, over the border, their tariffs, and they have so many import laws. Yeah. I mean, hey, I love my Canadian
yes.
friends, but sorry, I'm never gonna be able to sell
It
CBD to you.
is
It's absolutely
I'll
impossible.
give you an idea of how insane it is. You can only send 1 pound of a seed. You can send as many pounds of seed, but if you send more than 1 pound of a type of seed, they stop it at the border, as I learned. In
Yeah.
the shipping, I sent one last week to a friend in Canada just as a gift. The
Mhm.
shipping was way more than the Sprout Spout and the seeds.
Oh,
This
great.
is completely unsustainable from a
Yeah.
shipping perspective. And they said, "Well, in Canada, you can write off as a tax write off your shipping expenses." I was like, "Yeah, that doesn't work here."
Ooh. Yeah, we need to actually be making money to write things
Yeah.
off. You can't write things off. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's really unique that you have such a, because you are a very healthy looking person. Like yeah, whenever I see you on podcasts, on Instagram, you just like exude health. So I'm very curious, like, have you always been doing
No,
sprouts? What
no.
else? So how'd you get here?
COVID, when the farmers markets were closed and stuff, and
Oh, so literally you were looking for like a replacement
yeah,
for the farmer's
yeah,
market.
I was
Wow.
literally saying, "Why is it that people" in the data I'll tell you my favorite study that came out like 2 months ago, examine.com.
Hmm.
730,000 participants. That's not a small study.
Huge study.
So look up broccoli on examine.com, and they looked at all these studies on broccoli, and there were two groups:
Mhm.
those who consumed broccoli once a week and those who didn't consume broccoli once a week. So
Mhm.
your high broccoli means you eat it at least once a week. Now, as a bias here, the reason I like this study is it's on broccoli, but broccoli sprouts have 10 to 100 times the amount of sulforaphane. That's why broccoli sprouts are just like crazy
Mm.
powerful.
Okay.
Point being, what they ended up finding was after the study was completed that you are 35% less likely to develop any type of cancer if you are eating
Mm.
broccoli at least once a week. So if you're getting broccoli
Whoa.
sprouts, you are definitely getting more nutrients than you are from a broccoli stalk. So I try to tell
Mhm.
people cancer is one of those things where it's kind of an ambiguous thing as to who gets it, who doesn't. But if you know there's a 35% less chance, and I'm sure some of that's correlation and causation, but it would be a good thing for you to stack in your arsenal to if you have cancer
Yeah.
in your family, to get at least a handful of broccoli sprouts. If you're not going to eat broccoli sprouts, eat broccoli at least once a week.
Mhm.
Bodybuilders know this. That's why they eat chicken breast, sweet potato, and broccoli, is because they're basically like,
Right.
we have to just keep it to really simple staples and get
Mhm.
all our macros and micros from
Mhm.
this. And they figured that out a long time ago. If you're only going to eat one vegetable, eat a broccoli.
Totally. One thing I'm curious about is, as a nutritionist, I think about making sure that we have the right food groups together. And I try to make sure I don't combine oxalates with calcium in my food. I try to not combine phytates when I'm eating protein. So my question to you is, do you know if there's any kind of anti-nutrient in sprouts, or is, because they're not growing to maturity, would there be much? I don't know the answer to this, and you might not either. But do you know if there's less like phytic acid, less oxalates, less lectins in sprouts versus the full grown vegetable?
Yeah, so the one that gets a lot of, I know I've read some of the books. I'm trying to think of the name of the doctor who did the gut book recently, and I read that, and he was basically pushing back on lectins, right? I will tell you this: when you sprout, you reduce the lectins in a mung bean dramatically, and that's, I think the
Okay.
only two that would affect the lectins that we're talking about would be the mung beans and the lentil sprouts, which are in
Okay.
the 5-seed mix. That would
Hmm.
be, sprouting will reduce your lectins to pretty much nil at that point.
Wow. Okay. Great.
But as far as what you were saying with some of the other phytonutrients, I don't know the answer to that. I will tell you this: anytime you're eating something that's high in vitamins and minerals, it almost always is better absorbed if you have it with a fat.
For
Even if
sure.
you're just taking a vitamin D
Hmm.
supplement, if you read, they'll say you'll actually get like 25% more of that vitamin D if you're taking
Hmm.
it with a fat.
Yeah. Anything fat soluble, right? CBD too. If you take CBD, you need the fat in there as well. It really helps. You don't need it, like you said, but it helps absorption.
When I have
Cool.
a question for you
Can
on
you?
CBD. If
Yeah.
people are taking it to help sleep, okay, and
Hmm.
this is one thing I think gets lost in translation. They almost always tell you take CBD sublingually, right?
Hmm.
What about people who are chronically waking up around 2 a.m.? Would it make more sense for them to take it orally because it takes like another hour for it to kick in? Would that buy you some more time, delay the onset?
When you say orally, capsules like gels
Just
would be
taking the
what I recommend.
oil down their throat instead of
Oh.
sublingually.
So the problem is CBD does not survive in stomach acid. Pretty much the moment it hits your stomach acid, it gets destroyed. So this sublingual is the only way to
Got it.
really get. And then also when you swallow it, it'll get stuck in your esophagus and then it'll absorb there. It's just the when it hits your stomach, it's
Yeah.
pretty much done. So what we do for our soft gels is we emulsify it. We add a polysorbate emulsifier to protect it in your stomach to get to your liver, right? The goal is to keep it safe until it gets to your liver to absorb.
Mhm.
I've always said that. It's actually on my website right now, is if you need if you have problems falling asleep and you need fast acting help falling asleep, the sublingual CBD oil gets you to sleep. If you need help staying asleep, exactly what you said, oral CBD from CBD capsules that has been emulsified to protect. That is a much longer trigger. Takes about 90 minutes before it really gets to full
Yeah.
effect. So, if you're asleep at that, you sleep for 90 minutes and then that hits and you get the next basically 6 hours with that CBD.
I've tried a lot of sleep supplements, but I will tell you the number one game-changing supplement for me to get a good night's sleep, and I don't have any problem falling asleep, it's staying asleep.
Mm-hmm.
By far, the biggest game changer has been ashwagandha.
Really? Before bed?
No, yeah, I take it right when I'm going to bed, and I cycle it on and off, so I notice the difference is pretty pronounced, but what I will say is the
Mm-hmm.
number one difference is if I get up at, like, 2 AM to go to the
Mm-hmm.
bathroom or something, it is way easier to not give into monkey mind and
Yeah.
then wake up and start thinking about
Mm-hmm.
your day. The
Right.
ashwagandha, I find it much, much easier to just go right back in. And the difference
Very
at
cool.
6, 7 a.m. between me taking
Mm-hmm.
2 hours to fall back asleep and 20 minutes is dramatic the next day, to the
Whoa.
point that I can crush a workout no problem if I fall back asleep. And it's going to be a big labor. I'll still do the workout, but it won't be nearly as fun.
Oh, that's really
Yeah.
cool. Wow, I didn't know that. We have USA Medical ashwagandha. I'll send you some to try.
Do you
The
feel
same
like the
as what
whole
you use.
KSM thing is worth the difference?
I work with
Yeah.
KSM. They're a very good company.
So KSM is a particular basically, tell people what that is.
It's like a brand. It's like a very special brand of ashwagandha. They do it very specially. They have special feels, special It's like it's kind of like, they're like the I don't know. They're
The
like
USDA.
yeah. They're like yeah exactly. They're not USDA certified, but They are like the cream of the crop when it comes to ashwagandha. But there are so many ashwagandha suppliers. We have multiple suppliers just because you have to, just in
Oh
case.
yeah.
KSM is very, very good. But I have not particularly noticed when I take, because we have different organic suppliers, and I only do organic suppliers, for the most part. But when I take ashwagandha from KSM versus someone else, I don't notice much of it. I do notice.
I was curious as to what your experience was.
Yeah, I don't notice much of a difference. I think they're great. They're the known name.
I will tell you one thing that I'm looking into. I don't carry these, so there's no bias, I don't think, in this, because I don't actually carry these sprouts. That I think is personally the most, in terms of cost and benefit, I think it was one of the most underrated sprouts, and that would be fenugreek seeds. I don't know if you looked.
I've heard a lot about fenugreek.
Yeah, and testosterone and libido and things like that. And how when I priced them out, I was like, "This is the cheapest sprout." And when I say they grew in the Sprout Spout, I mean I threw in a ton. And in 3 days, I shot some Instagram reels, and people were like, "What the heck is that?" And they smell, when you're sprouting fenugreek, it smells just like maple syrup in your house.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds amazing.
And when you eat them, I will tell you, they
Yeah.
say the number one side effect, and it is absolutely true, is your sweat and your pee will smell like maple syrup. So when you go to the bathroom, you
Whoa.
will be like, it smells like somebody poured maple syrup in here.
That's not.
It's not. But what I will tell
Yeah.
you is, I think it's a super underrated superfood that I go, now the studies are fairly recent, so I don't think historically they've known what much benefit to it, other than it was like a Eastern medicine type thing. That is one that I've been throwing on water. Like when I eat watermelon, I'll throw a big handful of those fenugreek sprouts on there, and it adds a crunch.
Oh,
But
wow. Yeah.
they don't taste very vegetal. They taste basically like a honeysuckle. That, if you remember those
That's cool.
honeysuckle plants that have the tiny little bit
Yeah.
of honey, kind of something like that. That's what
Wow.
I've been playing around with. I'd love to start carrying them at some point.
Mhm.
But to your point with the KSM stuff, boy, to get USDA certified organic on my brand, it was a lot of work, dude.
You're never gonna get it. Yeah.
I got it.
Congratulations.
I had to work.
That's
I had to
amazing.
work with a previously certified organic supplier, but
Okay.
even just
That's how you do it for sure.
even just the label, they had to sign off on that label. It was almost 3 months of work to get them to sign off on that label.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. We use 100% USDA organic ingredients in all of our CBD products, but they won't certify us because we do our own manufacturing, and we are not a GMP certified manufacturing plant. Even though we follow all of the protocols, we follow all of the.
No, I totally follow.
We need to go to a different manufacturer who is massive and pay them to do it. I've told all my customers, like, look, we do it USDA organic and we do it the best. I'm really happy that you feel the same way about doing it.
It's kind of like when you go to a farmer's market, right? None of them have organic certification when you're at the farmer's market. But you're like, yeah, do you use anything? They're like, no, we just grow it here. If you know the person and you know the source, it's actually probably even better off than having the seal on there.
Totally. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen them before where it's like we show, like, look, there's literally, there's nothing in it but what we say. It's exactly as pure as we say it is, which is really important with CBD. Not all of our vitamins have them, so not just our CBD, but like ashwagandha, magnesium. Like, we post our lab tests for everything because it's like, look, you'd be shocked how much lead just gets into vitamins and products from these massive manufacturing companies. Because you got to think, like, these machines are, there's machinery, there's lead, there's crap. So lab testing is very, very important. And the USDA stuff, I did not know that you had that that's crazy to have that, because that means that everything you're doing is just above every bar. So that's awesome.
Hey, I try. Yeah, you're definitely right about the lab testing. And also, you got to be cautious when you buy vitamins that have a proprietary blend, and it does not tell you the amounts of those.
Totally. I hate that. I just saw there's a company, I don't know their name, but they're blowing up right now for this detox blend. I hate the word detox so much, but yeah, and it's like proprietary detox blend. Who would take that? Who in their right mind would take that? That's insane to me. Crazy.
Well, the way that they're tricking, especially these fly-by-night supplement companies, the way they're tricking people is they mention a bunch of famous things that people know or have heard of. What they're not telling you is it is a trace amount of that in there that is nowhere near the effective dose. And so whenever I see that proprietary blend stuff, I go, oh, okay, come on. For all I know, there's, whether it's,
Yeah.
I want to think clearly. So it mentions like a couple of mushrooms and some L-theanine and some caffeine.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of anything is in this. And that, to me, you're setting yourself up for disaster is what you're doing, because it's a lot of fillers is what it is.
100%.
Yeah.
So right now it sounds like your product, what's it called?
Sprout Spout.
Sprout Spout. To me, it sounds like an absolute no-brainer for people to get and try, because it's everything you've described it as. It sounds very easy. It sounds very renewable. It sounds very quick. It sounds like it's tasty. It sounds like you have all of the nutrients, and the prices. I think you could charge more for it, honestly, from what you've just told me. So what do you feel like the struggle is getting people to buy it?
I think it's multiple things. Number one is there is a stigma that happened in the 70s and 80s with sprouting, where people got away from it because they heard of an alfalfa. Someone got sick from alfalfa or mold and mildew and things like that. So I asked some elderly people that I knew, like when I was asking around, like, why don't you sprout? And the number one feedback I got was, well, I heard it can have mold and mildew. And that is true. You can totally, any type of thing at home, you can have mold and mildew. And so there was a little bit of stigma with that. Even when I was telling you I just presented in Vegas, the judges were like, I've not heard of sprouting. Tell me what sprouting is.
Is that crazy? Like, I'd not heard of it either until recently. It seems like that, like you said, it should have been a thing that's happened.
Well,
but it's
okay.
not.
So
It's
the number one reason that people don't see or recognize broccoli sprouts, including in a Whole Foods, is because they have not ever managed to commercialize it. Because once you sprout them, you got about 5 to 7 days to consume them, and then they're like, it's just too much of a risk. Now, I'll say, kind of with an asterisk there, I have had them in a Ziploc in my fridge much longer than 5, 7 days, but it's just like any other vegetable. Just keep an eye on it. If you could figure out a way to commercialize truffle mushrooms, you could easily buy your own island, right?
Yeah.
So all I was doing was saying, well, I know that this is what people struggle with. For example, for a mason jar, they tell you 2 tablespoons of seeds. Well, most people don't want to water a thing for 5 days and clean out that nasty jar for one handful of sprouts.
Crazy. Yeah.
And it's just a very reasonable thing. I don't want to do all that work for one handful of sprouts. And it makes perfect sense. But if you go to the farmer's market, that handful of sprouts is about $9. Now, to your point, why is it not more popular? I think it's the same thing you're talking about, which is like, well, I don't know that this, what are the benefits of this? I feel like selling your product would be a whole lot easier. By the way, when we were building our website, we went through a lot of CBD and looked at like, what is it? Because we were trying to build a subscription-based model. And so we were looking at the top 5 subscription services on the internet on Shopify sites. And I think 2 of them were CBD sites. And when you see that, I can tell you, as someone in my position, you go, that's a lot more instant gratification than 4 days of growing your own vegetables.
Yeah. The grass is always greener.
In this case, the sprouts are greener, but yeah.
The sprouts are greener, and
Yeah.
That question up. So you just think that there was a lot of stigma around it that kind of got it killed. There's no way to commercialize it. And now you've innovated a new product. You've really cut out a new niche in this space. So, I mean, we're kind of having this conversation on the ground floor of this. This very much should be a multi-million-dollar business of just like, because it makes so much sense. So what do you need help with? Like, how come? Because I have it right here. I'm very interested to start using it after this conversation and talk about, you know what I mean?
I think you're the perfect customer because you were doubtful. You're giving it the benefit of a doubt. I would love it if you tried it. And even if you came back and go, look, it didn't work, and here's why. I'm all about feedback. It's my responsibility. Every time the customers, they don't know this. The customers, when they email the company, it goes directly to me, and I read every single one, and I respond.
Yeah, same.
Everything from, hey, great instructions. I think the music is a little loud, to, this order.
Yeah, the music's loud. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I feel like the shipping could be faster and things like that, but I take it very seriously. I'm trying to make a great impact on the world. I think the number one thing is spreading the awareness of the health benefits, and that it's really not that complicated. I think a lot of people see it. And influencers, as you know, they want to unbox a product and basically say, I did my part. I'm done.
Show it, done, be done.
And that's where I go, this isn't that kind of product, because that doesn't do me any good if you just want to unbox it and make a flashy video. So it's hard to actually get people to understand this is a big, like, a homesteader gets it. They're like all about patience. But
Yeah,
when
yeah, they
you're
get it.
talking about people who want to pour a scoop of athletic greens and go, I did all my stuff for today and I'm done. It's like, yeah, that's
Yeah,
not the way it works.
right. Yeah. Yeah. The instant it's nice that CBD, CBG, that kind of stuff, it does
Yeah.
quickly, and the sprouts, take a couple of days. But this is such I mean, the fact that, like, even not liking the alfalfa, growing my own crop was really cool. I
Yeah.
did this, like, I've never grown anything before. I don't do that. So it's very, very gratifying to have something that you have grown and then literally eat it. I was talking to my dad about this yesterday, about how we've grown up in a culture of distrusting food. The culture is like, no, we go to the store and get food, and anything from home is dangerous, or it's not,
Yeah.
healthy, or it's not. So I've really been trying to unpack in my own life of, like, no, the store is a luxury. Like,
Yeah.
we can grow food, we can get our own food, and like you said, the homesteaders obviously
Yeah.
get this very.
And if you
But
think
yeah,
about,
I'm learning it.
so there's two parts to that. One is the fulfillment, like you're saying, I think you're alluding to. The fulfillment you
Mhm.
get from feeding it to your kids or feeding it to your girlfriend, and you're eating it for dinner. You're like, dude,
Yes.
I grew this
Yeah.
on the counter yesterday.
Grew
This is,
this.
within 5 feet of my kitchen.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. The other, I was going to say one more thing about the, oh, I know what it was. Michael Pollan,
Yeah.
if you've read any of his books, he's a very prolific food writer. And
Okay.
what he argues in books like The Omnivore's Dilemma is that what we have done, especially when you look up north, you have people who make a lot of money and they don't want to cook when they get home because they could literally pay someone a fraction of what they make to. And so that's called
Totally.
specialization. And
Mhm.
what specialization has done, and I know plenty of people in New York who have never cooked a meal. Like, they'll say, I was there for 10 years
Mhm.
and I never once
Right.
lit my stove. I went
Right.
out to eat every single meal. And
Mhm.
from a financial standpoint, it makes sense. You go by
Mhm.
the food booth, you get what you need, or you whatever. What I will argue is that there is a certain part of our nature that says, I made this dinner and I'm going to
Mhm.
connect with somebody because we're breaking bread together.
Yeah.
And that's the part I feel got lost, is what happened
Mhm.
to the idea of making dinner with your own hands and seeing it go from there to there. And quite frankly, if you want to get into a health perspective, your digestive enzymes are designed
Mhm.
to build up the entire time you're smelling and cooking the food, so that by the time the
Mhm.
food goes into your stomach's ready for it and it
Mhm.
breaks down the food. When you think
Definitely.
about the fact that, like, a whole lot of people in the nation are on
Oh,
antacids,
yeah, yeah.
the big part of that is when you're driving through, you pull it in a bag and then you start eating. Your stomach has not had any time for that. So basically, doing a wear and tear on your stomach in terms of the
Mhm.
nutrients aren't being absorbed. You're basically causing reflux. So you just take the purple pill and it
Mhm.
solves it for now. If you want to take it back to a health perspective, preparing your own food gives your brain and your body this chance to build up to it and really enjoy the
Mhm.
bites, as opposed to just walking in, grabbing it off a counter and
Mhm.
start eating. That's
Yeah,
my
I
2
love what you
cents
said
as
about that.
to what I feel. I'm trying to add that back into people's life and say, you don't have to outsource this. You can actually do it
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah, that's so good. I was just in France a couple weeks ago, and, like, meals there are so different. Like, we're on our phones. We have
Yeah.
meetings over like, meetings over meals is the most American concept. Nobody else in Europe is doing meetings over meals. In Italy, you're going home during riposo, right? You're going home to have your time
Yeah.
off. In France, you're taking a 2-hour break. It's like, whenever you sit down, like, so whenever you're sitting down to break bread with people, this is a thing. You're doing this together and you're having that meal. I was working on my laptop, I was on the phone, and my food came up, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not even eating my food. Like, so I like closed my laptop and sat down and ate properly. But it's just, we are such a go
Yeah.
culture. So I love that not only do you have that perspective, but this spout, like, actually provides that opportunity to, like you said, break bread. Like, hey, I made this. Let's do this together, and find. I assume you can find new recipes for this, find
Yeah.
new
It's in the
things,
newsletter.
and innovate using
Yeah.
them.
Great point. I actually was just talking to somebody last week about this, and they were asking what the difference was, because I love Italy, by the way, and They're like, well, what's the difference between breakfast in Italy and in America? I was like, first of all, they don't eat breakfast in Italy. At the most, they eat a croissant.
It's a croissant.
That lunch is going to be light. Dinner is going to be at least a 2-hour deal, which involves small portions, but several portions where it's from a food standpoint, I think everybody thinks of pasta when they think of Italians. They eat a ton of seafood.
Totally. The branzino,
when you're there and you look at the menus, almost like half of it is seafood, and when you eat it, the people like at the restaurant will be like, "Oh, I caught that at lunchtime today." It's just amazing.
So fresh.
I was in Spain a few months ago, and I was just kind of killing. It was a late night walk. It was dark, and I thought, let me drop in here and get a little tapas before I go home and go to bed. And I had like a glass of wine, and it was, I think, some shrimp scampi or something. That shrimp, I've had shrimp a few times in my life. This was like, I had no idea how sweet, like a freshly caught shrimp. Like I was just eating it and it tasted like super sweet. Like almost like when you eat fresh corn and you go, I forget when corn's picked the day you get it, it has this almost like sweet scallops. If you've ever had a scallop that was fresh, it has a sweet corn flavor to it. Totally. And if you get, at least here in Tennessee, if you get them in the grocery store, forget about it.
Yeah, not many fresh scallops in Tennessee.
No.
Right. I have one last question before we go. You mentioned you have a multi-pack.
Yeah.
Can I combine the mung bean and the broccoli, or they have to be grown separately?
They do not have to be grown separately. The only thing I would advise, and it's not necessary, is make sure you soak the mung beans for at least 10 hours. I generally opt for about 12 to be on the safe side. The broccoli seeds, I would probably soak them 8 to 10 hours. That's the only difference.
And over soaking is a bad thing?
Probably be hard to over soak the mung beans. I would think that broccoli is pretty forgiving, but I'm just giving you the recommended guidelines. When you measure them out with your cup, don't soak them in this because that's a mistake. In fact, I'm going to have these rebuilt in the next rendition, but people try to scoop them in this and soak them, and I'm like, a mung bean will triple in size when you soak it. So it immediately come over the top, and then the water will dry. So if you just soak them in a large cup before you put them in the Sprout Spout.
Oh,
use the Sprout Spout.
So don't soak them in the Sprout Spout. So soak them in a large cup and then transfer. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, just pour them into the top of those sprouts, and you should be good to go.
Cool. Well, I'm going to start it today. I'll let you know how it goes. Hopefully I have some sprouts.
This is so great, man. It's so good to connect with you and see what you're doing with USA Medical and changing lives. And I like how you're saying we're constantly upgrading the product, man, listening and, Yeah. Well, thanks, Jay.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in the same boat. So I'm very excited to see how this grows and keep the conversation going.
Absolutely, man. I look forward to your feedback. I hope we get some pictures or something of your first harvest.
Thanks, Daniel. We will.